India has an edible oil problem. We simply don't produce enough of it. More than 70% of it comes from Argentina, Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia, Russia, and Ukraine. And last year we spent a whopping $19 billion importing vegetable oil, a 71% leap. Unfortunately, these figures are only expected to grow. Now, the government has been trying to aid self-reliance. They've been offering higher MSPs for oilseeds of late, and there is the oil palm mission to increase palm oil production and reduce dependency on imports. But perhaps the most radical solution proposed to combat this issue involves mustard oil, or more specifically hybrid DMH11. It's a genetically modified mustard variant developed by a team of researchers at the University of Delhi. They created this hybrid from Indian and East European mustard varieties by inserting very specific genes to improve yields, induce herbicide resistance, and make it safe for human consumption. And trial reports from the Indian Council of Agricultural Research already indicate that GM mustard could deliver better yields when compared to some of the best mustard varieties in India right now, almost 30% higher. Experts also believe that a commercial introduction of genetically modified mustard could double the total acreage under oilseed cultivation. And if all goes according to plan, this could help reduce our dependence on edible oil imports. But India has only approved one genetically modified crop for commercial cultivation so far, Bt cotton. And we don't eat cotton. In 2010, when the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, India's regulator for GM crops, approved Bt brinjal, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change did not permit its commercialization. In 2017, when the GEC recommended the commercial release of GM mustard, the Environment Ministry rejected it again. And now, almost 5 years on, the GEC has once again paved the way for the commercial release of DMH11, and there is strong opposition from multiple groups. So what's the issue here, you ask? Well, safety concerns, of course. Many people believe that GM foods are inherently unfit for human consumption. But that is not always true. Individual GM crops and their safety is assessed on a case-by-case basis, and regulators take a decision based on this data. And here's where the primary reservations stem from. Multiple NGOs and academics have contested the data. They also believe that the introduction of GM mustard could threaten wild pollinators like bees. And remember how we noted that this crop is herbicide resistant? Well, if it's herbicide resistant, farmers could use it indiscriminately to clear their fields of weeds. And some herbicides happen to be neurotoxins, so you have those concerns as well. Finally, they believe that this could also pave the way for more Bt crops. And if foreign companies own the exclusive rights to develop and market these seeds, India's food security may ultimately depend on the whims and fancies of these foreign institutions. But there's the other side of the argument. The GEC clearance doesn't automatically mean we will start seeing GM mustard everywhere. Instead, over the next 2 years, the government will initiate the environmental release of GM mustard for seed production and testing according to Indian Council of Agricultural Research guidelines. And if everything checks out, DHM11 could be commercialized eventually. Also, note that India isn't self-sufficient in this department by any stretch of the imagination. We have been importing edible oil from foreign countries, often extracted from genetically modified variants. So the health concerns associated with Bt mustard isn't going away, whether we adopt them locally or not. Finally, our tryst with Bt crops, especially Bt cotton, hasn't been all that terrible. In fact, cotton yields have improved considerably and we are now the world's second largest cotton producer, despite some recent concerns. Nonetheless, despite the apparent benefits, the GEC clearance will be fiercely contested. The proponents of GM mustard will advocate for rapid commercialization, whereas NGOs and farmer groups will likely resist their adoption. Where does your allegiance lie? Let us know. Until then, don't forget to share this article on WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Ditto Insights, a simple checklist for picking the best health insurance for you and your loved ones. 1. Don't split the bill. Insurers might nudge you to consider a co-payment clause, in which case, you'll be forced to foot a part of the bill each time you make a claim. This might not be the best option unless you have no choice or are purchasing for elderly citizens. 2. Restrictions on room and room rent. Some insurers will have a limit on room rent, and if you breach this limit, they'll make you pay extra for every little service rendered in the room. So opt for a policy that doesn't have too many restrictions on this front. 3. Check for disease-wise sublimits. It's what happens when the insurer offers you a massive cover for a modest fee, only to include restrictions on coverage for each disease. So make sure you check these sublimits before making a decision. 4. Seek a low waiting period. If you have pre-existing diseases, you might have to wait a fixed period before you're covered. It's best to pick a policy where you don't have to wait a lot. 5. Coverage for daycare treatments, chemotherapy, dialysis, a quick appendectomy. All these procedures might last less than 24 hours, and some insurers might not cover these claims because they don't do daycare treatments. So make sure you check for daycare coverage.